talking about SNL, the history, the mysteries, and all the hot impressions in between, breaking down all the numbers as well. In your favorite sketches with special guests, it's on the Saturday Night Network.
Yes, that is right. Welcome everybody on in to the Saturday Night Network for the first hot take show of 2025. Here to cover the Dave Chappelle and GloRilla episode of Saturday Night Live. My name is John from the SNN. Very excited to be back with all of you right after this episode, as we are after every SNL episode, but especially this year in 2025 with all the exciting things we have in the SNL universe coming around. So looking forward to getting to our discussion about a very fascinating episode of SNL that we saw here tonight. We are, of course, here as a presentation of LateNighter.com. Love our friends over at Late Nighter, so go check out everything they got going on over there, and with a great panel and an amazing chat here tonight who's going to tell us all of their thoughts about the show we saw here. So first up, let's bring in my man, Bill Kenney's here. Bill, how are you?
John, I'm so good. I hope nobody in the chat pops a balloon on me. This was what a night. I mean, this is, we compare SNL to sports all the time. This is one of those things, and we've got a great sports mind here in Law as well. You watch SNL, and most of the time it's kind of regular. You kind of expect it the way it is. And sometimes you luck out and you see history. And in one form or another, we saw history tonight.
Yes, it reminds me a little bit of when I'm watching a football game and I see a very unique score, and I'm like, are we going to get scoreagami here? I don't know if you in the chat, if you're big fans, just a very unique. So I was like watching the segments tonight, trying to figure out what was going on. Anyways, we're going to get into it, but we got to bring in one of the great SNL and SNL fans and sports writers there is. Law Murray is here. Law, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you guys this evening.
Great to see you too, Law. Looking forward to getting into everything we saw here. So glad to get to speak to you about the show here tonight. So let's dive right in. I know everyone's really excited to talk about this one. So let's do it. Dave Chappelle hosting for the fourth time. So the history of Dave Chappelle with SNL is a pretty long one now, going back to season 42. We're going to get into all of that on Monday on the roundtable about him coming in and after all the elections and what, everything with Dave and SNL. So we're not going to do that whole thing tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about what we saw here in this episode. But one of the themes that we do see when Dave hosts the show is that it is always a fairly unique episode. That's what Bill alluded to. One of those things is a really long monologue where it could affect other segments of the show. How much do we see the cast? All of those things start to come into question when we see Dave Chappelle hosted episodes. So Bill Kenney, in his fourth time out, how are you feeling about Dave Chappelle's episode tonight?
I feel it was better than his last. I'm not really sure where that puts it as far as great episodes, things like that. But, the last time he was on midterms 2022, he did the long monologue and then he kind of disappeared. He did a couple of pre-tapes but he wasn't in very much. Here we did see him a lot more at the top of the show after his long monologue. So, and I think he did fairly well in those sketches. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about where we are with this episode.
Law, how about you? How do you feel about the episode we saw here tonight? Any headlines or hot takes?
Man, I was concerned going in because, I think Bill's nice about it. I didn't think Dave would ever host again after 2022. And it was interesting because he revealed that he was at least asked, and I think people saw who was hosting around the last show after the election in November, and was like, "Oh, Dave is out." It's like, nah, that was an assumption and a wrong one. So, it was good to see him at least come up to adequate tonight. Not to grade this right now, and I think we need to talk through it. This is a hot take show, and we got some hot takes, I'm sure. But I was surprised to just even see him tonight. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm still kind of like, I'm excited to talk through it with y'all.
Yeah, me too. I think we definitely need to process it. I think that this was a rebound effort from Dave on the show here. In season 42, and we'll do the quick summary. Season 42, I think a lot of people agree, was an epic all-time episode of Saturday Night Live that will go down in the books as one of the more unique episodes ever. Him coming in when he came in 2016. 2020 was a very weird follow-up. Everyone was very pumped and hyped for him to come back. Didn't meet the mark. And then a couple seasons ago, he comes back again, and nobody really knew what to make of that episode. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. There was obviously a lot of comments outside, off the field stuff, and people felt unsure about should they enjoy this episode? Are they allowed to? A lot of that stuff. I felt like tonight, what I saw from Dave Chappelle, his monologue being the longest monologue in SNL history. Now he's broken his own record. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. I felt like he came ready to play, which was something that I think we questioned. Sometimes you'll watch an athlete and you'll be like, okay, you could do a really good job, but do you actually care to be there? Do you put in the effort? And I felt like, despite the fact that we didn't get a lot of segments here tonight, I felt like Dave actually showed up. And that's where I walk away from tonight feeling like, as a headline of like, okay, Dave showed up. And when Dave's on, he's as good as it gets. So for me, I felt like this was a little bit of a redemption story here in evaluating the legacy of Dave Chappelle on Saturday Night Live, where we had this epic start that really started to go downhill and got very shaky. And I'm feeling a little bit better about if this was it for Dave on SNL, which we don't know. But if it was, I'm feeling a little bit better about his legacy overall and how it connects to the show. So that's how I am right now at the start of our show here tonight. But of course, we got to talk through all of the segments and we'll do a proper evaluation at the end. Let's start with our MSNBC reports. So the first SNL segment we're going to get in 2025. And naturally, a lot of the talk is Trump's inauguration. That will be happening on Monday. So we open up with a panel with all different MSNBC personalities. Most notably, Rachel Maddow is there, played by Sarah Sherman. We got Marcelo as Ari Melber, Ego as Joy Reid, Chloe as Stephanie Rule, and Andrew as Chris Hayes. And they're all on the panel having conversations that they all agree are super boring, except when Trump tweets, it's breaking news, and they go and they'll talk about whatever Trump is talking about. We also get appearances from Heidi as Claire McCaskill, who's an everything correspondent. We have James playing Trump again in this, speaking about TikTok a little bit, which of course, was a theme for this episode, and we will talk about that momentarily. Bowen Yang appears as George Santos for the first time since December of 2023, and then the panel says live from New York. So Bill, how do you feel like SNL handled their first cold open of the new year?
This was okay. It's a little muddled. Obviously, you have to be an MSNBC viewer to really get. I have been, but like too many panelists, too many, and keep going back to the same joke about the breaking news. And isn't it funny that everything that Trump says, we're not going to do it this time? I like the conceit of that thought, but they just went to it too much. And then you do get James, which I do like. If you're gonna do Trump, you're gonna have to do Trump. He's gonna be in the news constantly. Zhazh is the perfect person to do that. So I'm okay cutting to him for a minute or two, getting a couple jokes in, getting out. But this was a little bit all over the place. I don't think this was a very good cold open.
Law, how'd you feel about it?
Yeah, it was fine. The show's been off for 4 weeks, so I feel like this was a good way to get a bunch of faces out there, get them involved. I wish it was faster or shorter, one or the other. And I think that's kind of conflicting when you have, 8 cast members in the cold open, I think. So that was always going to be a challenge. It's like, how can this was going to be a long monologue show, right? We looking to see, when is this thing going to end so we can get right to Dave, because Dave is going to take time, and we're not in an era of SNL where the cold open can be done in like 90 seconds. Like, I would personally love that. Like, hit something quick, we know who we can see, and then get right to live from New York. I really would love to get back to something like that at some point, whether it's this season, then the next era of the show when we're not celebrating the whole 50-year history, whatever. But I feel like this was an example of that conflict. Like, there's just not a lot of people think 90 minutes is a lot of time. And it's like, this is one of those shows that shows that it's not. So I think we were talking about this before when we had election season. We would always talk about how those cold opens in October going into the election day was like 10, 15 minutes long, right? So it's the same principle. It's just that it's the monologue that was long and the cold open is like, I just feel like it covered bases. It got faces on screen after not being on for 4 weeks, but I don't think that the cold open was particularly memorable.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that the problem for me is that if you're gonna build the conceit of we have these people on MSNBC and they're all supposed to, be on the opposite side of the political spectrum from Trump and they all hate him, but they can't stop talking about him, then I think you have to go harder at the people on the panel. And we were looking at the sketch from the POV of the panel when there should have been somebody built into the sketch that's making fun of these people who can't stop talking about Trump. So it was like almost like I don't know that they executed fully what they were going for with that portion. And then when James came on as Trump, to be honest, I felt like the energy of the cold open picked up a lot. And when he started talking about TikTok, I got excited because about an hour before the show, TikTok stopped working for me. And I don't know that that was like publicized anywhere. I think everyone thought that TikTok was supposed to stop working tomorrow. So I was really excited about how SNL was going to meet the moment here, where this is like a big deal, where one of the biggest social platforms in the world stopped working early. And they could have had something, tweak some of the writing and address this. And I think on Update, they may have alluded to it partially. But to me, like when James started going on about TikTok and talking about, how he loves the Rizzler and the Costco guys and the Get Ready With Me and all that stuff, I thought that was like exactly what I was looking for. Because if SNL is supposed to be a time capsule, like meet the moment here tonight, I would have dropped everything else and gone to that. So that's to me is what I would have done, Bill.
Exactly, John. And that's such a great point. And obviously you can't at 10 o'clock, I think it was right or before 10 o'clock that all of that happened. I'd have to check with my daughter to make sure that's the exact time. But,
Yeah.
It all went down, and we talk all the time about SNL can't do pop culture like it used to because there's too many options. There's the internet, there's social media, all these other shows, cable. And, it can't do what it did in 1980, where it can wait a week to talk about it. Here was this perfect opportunity to cover something before anybody else. You've got no other shows on. You got no late night shows. You've got no Daily Show, John Oliver. This is your moment. It's an hour before game time, and they kind of miss. Like, I don't know what they could have done, but I would have the writers in that room frantically writing to just come up with something and put it together.
And that's how I felt about it. And it wasn't even that I felt like, oh, we had to start from scratch here. You already had a cold open that the TikTok concept was built into it with James. So for me, it was like, that was the place to go. And I'm not saying you have to drop all of the however late they, Sarah, Marcelo, Ego, Chloe, Andrew stayed at NBC last night to rehearse this cold open. You don't have to drop that portion of it. But if you're going to do it, I would have significantly reduced it to focus on the thing that I think actually would have hit harder. Because, I don't know that how many people you're going to post online tomorrow. Like, you post this sketch online, I don't know how many people are really listening to what these 5 MSNBC correspondents are saying. Like, the truth is that a lot of our viewers, and we have people who watch our podcast and watch SNL who are from both sides of the spectrum. But a lot of our viewers, even ones who lean really left that are very anti-Trump, are very interested and fascinated to see how SNL is going to cover the second Trump administration. And I said that, he's not the president yet. There's still a couple days. But to me, SNL has a blank slate here to meet the moment with somebody who does a really good impression of the president. And to me, they sort of like dip their toe in the water without beginning what I think is going to be a monumental moment for the show. And I will challenge them to do better next week, because I didn't really love that cold open. All right, let's talk about the monologue here, which from my understanding was about an 8-minute monologue in dress rehearsal that turned into a over 16-minute monologue for the live show. So the logistics of how that went down, including the fact that probably multiple sketches get cut, is a fascinating one. We're not in the room with Lorne and the producers when they made that choice, or, because Dave didn't go rogue, but for whatever reason, they gave him the reins to go double or more than double the time on this. All of this stuff about him going on about Springfield, Ohio, and that stuff was in dress, but a lot of the stuff that he talked about was not, that people were hearing for the first time, including him discussing how Lorne asked him to do the first show after the election, and he said, "Nah, man, I'm cool." Talking about LA, and of course all the our thoughts are over there with all the fires and all of that. Talking about so he, like I said, he mentioned the Haitian food and all of the stuff from Springfield, Ohio. That stuff was addressed. He gets into the Diddy stuff a lot, which hasn't really been addressed on SNL at all this season. We sort of expected that to be a big topic during the fall, but it wasn't very much, except for a couple jokes from Che. Has some good stuff there. The Jimmy Carter story that he told, I believe, is one he has told before in some of his stand-up sets, but he included that in. So that sort of gave me a little bit of an indication that he was looking to add to his set. But for me, we could talk about the micro law, about the things that he discussed, but from a macro perspective, it is fascinating for me that Dave, who comes out the last few times and is best known for having these extremely long monologues, came into the night with a planned shorter monologue and ends up with the longest monologue in SNL history. So what do you think of all that?
I was uncomfortable. The whole thing made me uncomfortable, because it's one thing if it's long and it's rolling and rollicking, and I don't really, and mind you, I'm a child of Chappelle Show, okay? I'm a child of the Nutty Professor when he was in that movie, okay? Like I like Dave Chappelle and his stand-up and his rise in the early 2000s really resonates with me. Like my best friend would go on Coffee Shop and basically do Chappelle inspired stand-up and stuff. And it just, I don't feel like it hits like it should. Like only Dave Chappelle can get away with it, and get away is not the same as good, acceptable. You know what I mean? So, you would never let another host, there's not that many hosts that you would give even half of the time that Dave took. And it just feels like, and again, I feel bad saying this, but I feel like y'all know where I'm coming from. I feel like it's kind of like hijacking the show sometimes, it's not like Dave doesn't have good things to talk about. It's not that it was terrible. Like there were some funny moments. I actually feel like Dave's energy in this monologue was a lot better than his previous two. And that, but at the end, it felt like, oh, Dave's probably gonna end this with some kind of forward-thinking message about what's about to happen Monday. And of course it happened. And it felt like a token moment. It felt like, yeah, I gotta end it. I gotta mention it. Nothing is ever, even from Dave. And if I'm wrong, I'll be happy to be wrong. But nothing that Dave says in a Saturday Night Live monologue will ever hit and meet the moment like it did in 2016. 2016 felt authentic. It felt fresh. He was wrong, but we understood why he was wrong. You know what I'm saying? Some of us knew he was wrong when he said it, but we were like, I mean, yeah, I feel you. That's the message that needs to be said. Because again, the difference between Trump 2016 and Trump 2020, whatever this year is, 24 election, 25 is the year. The main difference is people didn't know exactly how he was going to do what he was going to do in 2016. And we know everything and way too much now. That's the difference. There is no quote unquote benefit of the doubt. So Dave had benefit of the doubt in 2016 and did great with it. And that doesn't exist anymore.
Bill, what do you think about everything that went down tonight with Dave in the monologue?
This is hard, and I think this is one of the few monologues I'm going to go back and rewatch. Usually I just kind of watch them at one time and that's it, even if I'm going to be on a round table with you, because there's not much more to get out of seeing something. But I was kind of engrossed with the history of it, again, just from my SNL nerddom side of it, and kind of looking at the clock and seeing how long it was taking, while enjoying some of the jokes, as Law alludes to. And it's interesting, and it's a good point about 2016. you know, everyone was excited in 2016 for Chappelle to be on. We hadn't seen him anywhere really in about 13, 14 years. You know, the great triumphant return of you know, the king of the early 2000s. And, you know, then obviously Trump wins, everything changes that week as it goes into the show. And he does end on that, you know, give him a chance, see what happens. It doesn't, Law perfectly puts this, like, it does not resonate the same way today. Everybody do better. Yeah, we tried to do better. We're not, you know, we know what's happening Monday. Let's not be, you know, glib about it here. But as far as the jokes, I think there is some good stuff here. I think, you know, the LA stuff is very touchy. You can't, you know, but I think he kept some of that okay. I think he went a little too far in some other ways. The poor people jokes didn't really work for me, except for, you know, kind of weaving Luigi into it. Luigi said, "You're welcome," and you know, the Haitian jokes were very funny, talking about that he lives the next town over, and you know that, but and going to the restaurant not knowing what he's eating, but it fell right off the bone. So there is some clips, some glimmer of the old Chappelle that we all know, love, grew up with. But yeah, it does feel a little tired and wheezy by the time, and you look at the clock and it's almost midnight.
So I've told a story a couple times on the podcast, so I apologize for anyone who's heard this before. I know we have a lot of new listeners this year, but when I was in New York in 2013, I was at the Comedy Cellar, and I went, and there was a bunch of like random comedians that were there that night, and in walks Dave Chappelle, who hadn't been performing in many years, and they basically interrupt the rest of the sets, and he sits on the piano and he lights up a cigarette, and he just goes on for 2 hours saying he's testing out new material and he's working on his comeback. And it was the most interesting, raw, authentic thing that I've seen. And it was just like a really cool, you know, experience for somebody who doesn't live in New York to like get that. And I told that story a couple times because it got into cover a couple of Chappelle episodes during our time podcasting. And I will say that the Chappelle I saw tonight was the most like that Chappelle I saw in 2013, because when I saw that Chappelle, and I watched a lot of Chappelle show growing up too, and knew, like, just I'm pretty familiar with him. He was always really self-deprecating, and I don't feel like he was recently in the last couple of monologues that he did. It really felt to me like he was bigger than the show and too good to be there. And you know, we could debate the material. But tonight, you know, when he was going into all that stuff about, you know, Puffy and Diddy, and talking about how he has snitch energy and all of this stuff, and he started making fun of himself, I feel like it endeared him more to this audience than what we got before, which allowed him to then go back and make fun of other people. Because if there's one thing Dave's good at, he's good at making fun of people. But I think you don't get that leash, you don't get that leeway if you're not willing to make fun of yourself. And I think that with him doing that tonight, I feel like it opened up more avenues for him to go with comedy. So I didn't see the dress monologue, so I can't personally compare it, but I could tell you from what I saw on screen, Law, I totally respect that you felt uncomfortable by some of the things he was saying. I felt more comfortable with what I saw from him tonight than some of the other ones. And if you were watching, I know some of you watch the Twitter or X feed of the monologue, where sometimes they'll show Donna going and grabbing the host after to take them off the stage. So there's a great shot. We put it up on our account of Dave. Usually they run off. Donna like pulls the host. He stops in the middle of the hall, like right before he goes out, with his arms up in the air, and the crowd is just going nuts for him. And I haven't seen that from Dave in the last couple times. Law, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, man. That's what I'm saying. Like, I thought his energy, I thought his presence was good. Like, I felt like there was a part there, if you were listening, where he was like saying, I don't want to be controversial. And I felt like that was a little bit of breaking the fourth wall, as much as you can do that in the monologue in the first place. It was almost like an acknowledgement of, okay, maybe the last time I was here, things were heavier than they needed to be, or, you know, whatever feedback there was. And like, I think he felt that and wanted to be more of the kind of host that gets, you know, people want to work with or continue to work with. And that was, I felt like I didn't need that, but maybe someone on the show did. And I thought that was great. I thought like it felt like he wanted to be there. It felt like he
Yes.
had, and that part, I felt like that did translate. Do I wish some of the material or some things were effective or some things were a little bit snappier? Yeah, but I mean, I was happy for him that he was there. Maybe he needed that. I'll be interested to see if he has anything else to say about being on this week. But um, it's a live show too, and I think the audience, you know, even if it wasn't a classic or great monologue, it's Dave Chappelle. Like, you know, it's Dave Chappelle and it's New York in January, so I felt like that was cool.
You know, and sometimes throughout the history of the show, Lauren has had to make some really tough decisions. And I do wonder at what level the decision was to lower the lights on Chappelle's monologue tonight and just have the focus be on him with the band completely blacked out, him smoking, him sitting on the stool. The look and feel was different than him doing the typical SNL stand-up monologue with the mic walking around that he's done the last few times. This felt very authentically him. And I have to wonder on a production level if the feeling was, let's make Dave feel absolutely at home so that when he does go into sketches, he gives it 110%. So that was the feeling I got tonight. And this is one of those episodes I would just love. Just give me 2 minutes of like some producer to just tell me like, how did that develop the way it did? So, all right. Can't wait to get into this more throughout the week. Let's get into the sketches that we did see here tonight. Let's talk about the Immigrant Dad Talk Show, which we had not seen since the Rami Youssef episode last season, but comes back for the second time. Marcelo playing Joaquin Antonio. This time brings his, I'll say his neighbor Richard, just to so I don't get myself in any trouble. The neighbor Richard here, played by Dave Chappelle, and they end up bringing back a couple characters that we saw in this first sketch. Mikey plays Kevin, Disney plays his son Connor, Chloe plays his wife. We didn't see Chloe last time in this sketch, and Devin plays Dave's son here. But so much fun back and forth. Very Dave Chappelle energy next to Marcelo, and I would love to know, Bill, how you felt about them bringing this sketch back.
Yeah, I mean, this was the perfect place to bring it back. I think it actually kind of eclipses what they did with Rami, because you've got Dave, you've got a goat in the building. I think Dave's energy was very good in this, probably the best we've seen him in a live sketch since Aunt Jemima, right? I mean, that this is going back. He really kind of brings it. Him and Marcelo bounce off of each other very well. Mikey playing the typical white bread dad that lives next door that's not really comfortable with everything that's going on, and you know, upping the game as far as, you know, making him kiss his son and their response to that. Like there's a very I'm Italian, so there's a very Italian energy to that. With, you know, oh, what's happening here? You got it backwards, you know, and then he shakes the hand of and Chappelle meeting his son was fantastic. Comes out, shakes hand, nice to meet you. Like this is one of the shining moments of the night for me with Dave.
Law, what do you think of the return of the Immigrant Dad Talk Show?
I'm surprised that they even brought that back, but I remember one of the last times I was here, I was like, this season has a severe lack of characters and lack of recurring sketches, and I'm thrilled that Marcello has a recurring sketch or a character that, I mean, Marcello was great, period, but like this was like, for me, when Pete got to work with Dave in, I think, 2020. Remember the Count Chocula or whatever, like the chemistry that they had in that particular sketch. I felt like that was mirrored in this one. Like they were great together. I can feel that they spent this week getting some things right to hit in this sketch. And of course, this was like the only sketch in between the monologue and like 9 o'clock or whatever. So of course, you know, there was that part of it, but that was fun. Just it felt like Dave possibly had a way of writing some of that as well. Like having Devon come in for like 10 seconds or whatever. Oh, that's my son, and then dipping. And, you know, I loved like Chloe just rolling her eyes as Mikey gets on and gets a piggyback ride and whatnot off, like the discomfort of that. Like I wish that could have been explored a little more, but I thought it was fun. I thought it was a fun, multi-layered sketch. It's a good one for Marcello to bring back a couple times each season.
Yeah, let me also just say a great night for Devin Walker, somebody who is really, you know, since the first episode of the season where he had a great start and then just completely fell off. You know, we haven't seen him at all for the last 7 episodes, you know, and this is great. A great night for him. But yeah, I was so excited to get this one back. For me, this to me was a great indication of what Marcello could do on the show when I saw this last season. He's had some really big moments naturally with Domingo, and, you know, outside of the show, everyone knows him as Domingo. And obviously Shabato Agante, and he's had some really good stuff on Update this season. But for me, this was like the crown jewel of his career so far, because I feel like this sketch, you know, could have occurred in any era of the show had there been diversity. And like, it didn't need to take place in the 2020s. Like I'm saying, if Marcello was around, like this could have taken place. It's low key, it's fun, and then they ramp it up when they need to. I feel like the writing on this is so good. All of the things that they don't understand how other ethnicities do, and they're able to sit on their chairs outside. It just clearly just, you know, the idea that, I think we discussed this, Bill, I forget if you were on with me to discuss this last year or not, but the idea that this isn't a talk show that takes place in a studio, but the talk show takes place outside of a building, and it's so like authentic to the experience of people sitting around with their neighbors or friends and talking about other types of people. It just kills on every level for me. So I don't know about you, but I feel like this was a really, really strong sequel.
Very strong sequel. As I said, I think this is better than the first, and I think this is something you can bring back more than once. You know, you can have this a couple times a year, depending on the host. You know, this would have worked with a Bill Burr. You know, this would have worked with a couple other hosts that we've already had this year. But yeah, Dave is the perfect person to put in this sketch. It's relatable on a lot of different levels. And to be able to see this, and Marcello is just having an MVP type season. So I'd love to see this come back like it did.
Yeah, and I do like that if you're going to have Dave opposite Marcello, Dave has like really, really low energy, but purposefully. Like that's his thing. And what you get with Marcello in this case is a guy who could like ramp it up all the way. And I feel like it really works on a Marcello and Jane sort of level on Update that we saw a few episodes ago, which we will talk about in a little bit. For me, this was a very, very good sketch to put Dave Chappelle in. And I'm very fascinated that they didn't put Emil in this one, who was shut out from the night. I thought that would have been like a very natural fit to include him at some point in this. But regardless, I'm happy they brought this back. I think if they're going to bring this back a third time, which I would encourage them to, because this is the type of recurring sketch I like to see, I would definitely think that we probably explored enough with the Mikey and Dismuke's relationship here, and there's probably other types of characters that we can bring to the world. But the whole back and forth about how people greet each other and say hello in different cultures is hilarious for me. So huge win and a great start to the night. Let's talk about fire evacuation. So we open up on a voiceover of James talking about the LA wildfires, and that, you know, eventually that this family is going to need to evacuate. So we get a family of Devin. Dave is playing a character named Reggie and Ego, and they're talking about all the stuff they need to grab because they got to go. But of course, Reggie has hidden stuff in the house. So he goes and he breaks down a wall, grabs a bunch of money. There ends up being passports that say that he is Demetrius Quinn and that he is a passport to the Dominican Republic. There ends up being a gun behind the clock as well. And we keep escalating the things that he's hidden around the house, including Michael Longfellow comes in and he tries to, there's a sort of this side plot where it's basically the A plot is the father Reggie and what he's hidden, and then the disappointment in his son for not being man enough to be able to understand what's going on, the relationship between Devin and Dave. But Michael Longfellow comes in, they end up shooting him. There's the whole bit about the thumb drive and the map in his ass. The Chloe, who is a French woman who's living in the house with his real family and his kids. So a lot of great lines here and a lot of fun back and forth. Law, how did you feel about the fire evacuation sketch we got?
Hey, this was the sketch where I knew that this was not 2022. Like, Dave was in it. He was participating. This was incredibly physical. It was gross. like this was not a sketch for the squeamish at all. Obviously, I'm in Los Angeles, full disclosure. So I have obviously had a ton of images about, I mean, look, I've got the WHATCHU app. I got everything. I've seen, people that I've known for years, neighborhoods that I've been in, go through this disaster out here. So, I was actually in Denver. True story. Like this, when everything was going down in LA, I was in Denver and I knew I had to eventually fly into LAX, while everything was going on. Everyone's asking me like, what's going on with the wildfires? Are you safe? Because when you live in LA, you might as well live right where everything is happening when people are seeing it on TV and whatnot. So, my neighborhood wasn't affected. I didn't have to worry about these evacuations. But as soon as I got off airplane mode, I got one of those fake alerts that ended the sketch tonight. I got one of those and I'm like tripping. I'm like, why does everybody's phone sound like an Amber Alert? And then I turn mine on. I'm like, oh, this is really happening. And then I was like, wait, how do they know where I live? And then I was like, wait, I would have gotten a text from somebody in the neighborhood to let me know, like, this doesn't seem right. And it was a fake alert. I woke me up real quick because I was asleep on that whole flight until it was time for me to land. That was my intuition. Was like, let me get some pictures, let me get some video. So I was.
Did you break open your wall before you realized that it was a fake alert?
I mean, I was on the plane. I was thinking, like, when I go back, and again, LAX is not close to where I live. It's like you get to LAX and it's like you might as well take another flight to get to my neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm up here thinking, mind you, I got my luggage. I've been on the road for 5 days. I was in Minnesota. I was in Denver, right? And so I'm like, if I did have to evacuate, what the hell am I going to do? The easiest thing is I live out of a suitcase anyway. I got a orange bag right now. I could go, but I'm up here thinking, like, what the heck would I do if I actually had to evacuate? Mind you, this is LA. Like, I came here thinking about earthquakes and whatnot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Drop and cover. We always are thinking about like some, extinction level event happening in this city. We just didn't think it would be wildfires in January. So this sketch, it was very interesting in that regard. The twist at the end, I'm pretty sure that people who aren't around this stuff weren't expecting that, but it was actually funny because the way that it ended, I was like, yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, the false alarm twist that we got at the end of the sketch really was relatable for you. So thanks for sharing that. And obviously, we're all glad that you're doing okay. Bill, how did you feel about this sketch that we got here tonight, the fire evacuation one?
This is one of those time capsule things, and it is always a tricky thing when it's an ongoing tragedy. I can remember the Anthrax sketches that they would do kind of early, late 2001 after that was happening, and that was still a very real thing that many people were affected by. This is on a much bigger scale, obviously, with the millions of people that are affected. But they found a way to do it and not be insulting to anyone. They did it in a very Chappelle way. I think this was the most like Chappelle show that I'd seen from him, other than his actual Chappelle show characters that we've seen over the years on SNL. Very frantic, very crazy stuff going on. I love Chloe living under his entertainment center with the two French kids. Boy, Ego needs a clue. Like she doesn't know what's going on. It's one thing to not know the money in the wall, but like you don't know if 3 people are living under your TV. But
she should have stayed a lesbian.
That's it, right? And yeah, I mean the Bosnian twist was a lot of fun too. I think that was a great way to escalate it and bring it to another level. So I did enjoy this one quite a bit, and I think again, everybody's saying it. Chappelle's energy was much higher tonight, and we saw it again here.
You both said it really well. I mean, this to me was one of the best sketches of season 50, bar none. And the truth of the matter is, this sketch didn't need the blood to be good. It was good in the writing, in the execution, in the dynamics here. There was nobody in this sketch that felt forced. The family of 3 was enough here. We didn't need a family of 5 or 6 and a lot of other people coming in here. I think it was the right amount of people. We got the dynamics. We understand the relationship between the father and the son, between the husband and the wife. And in just a few minutes, they completely built this world for us. And there was a couple of games that were going on here. And the blood, to me, was the great visual gag that people will always look at this sketch and take away from. But us as SNL superfans, I think we can all admit that, we've seen a bunch of sketches with blood in them, and it wasn't the blood here that was like, this isn't a Farewell Mr. Bunting where the blood comes out and everyone's all surprised and what, those types of sketches. This to me was the cherry on top. The fact that Chappelle himself was willing to be completely invested in the sketch and get all bloody and the whole thing. And then even the visual, I know it's obviously a fake dog, but the visual of him taking the knife and he's going to cut open the stomach of the dog and then he's going to stab the fake dog in the head after. And the whole thing to me was like, they were willing to take this all the way that they needed to do it. And those are the types of sketches that I think that there's a few of them throughout the years where we can watch them and we could be like, there is so much here to parse through about why these sketches are, as our friends would say, a boom stamp classic, in that you could start pulling things away and they're still just as good. So for me, this was, again, I think at the end of the season, we're still going to be talking about this one as being the absolute one of the best sketches of season 50 here. And I'm glad that Dave was willing to fully commit to it. Up next, we got performances from GloRilla. So not a lot in the front half of the show here. No pre-tape in the first half of the show since season 45. So it's been a long time since we have not had a pre-tape in the first half of the show. We go straight into our musical performance here. First performance, Yeah, Glow, and then What You Know About Me and Let Her Cook for the second performance here. So Law, let me ask you, are you a fan of GloRilla?
So here's what's funny. I was in Memphis last January, and that's where GloRilla's from. And when I was in Memphis, I didn't really know about her. And I had a friend, she know I watched the show, right? And she was trying to tell me about GloRilla. And it's like, you haven't heard of her because she hasn't been on Saturday Night Live yet. And of course, she's not only on SNL, but she's on the Dave Chappelle episode, which, I mean, look, GloRilla could have been on the Chappelle show if she was born like 25 years earlier. So I have become a big fan of GloRilla all because of her. And I was very excited that she was going to get this spot.
Bill, what did you think of GloRilla's performances tonight?
I loved it, and I think it's kind of ironic that Glo kind of made her bones on TikTok, and here we are the night that TikTok shuts down, maybe for good. And she's really just been such an up and comer the last couple years, and I've always enjoyed her performances. She had great stage performance in both of these sets, so loved seeing her on the show.
Yeah, I thought she was awesome here tonight. If you're a fan of hip hop, obviously you would enjoy GloRilla's performances and getting to see what she did on the show. And yes, that is a fascinating point here that a TikTok star is performing on SNL the night that TikTok died. So it'll be a interesting time capsule. But obviously, she's done really well for herself and will continue to grow or glow. All right, let's talk about weekend update here. So first weekend update of 2025, where we're going to get Jost and Shay back together. So coming off that really, really hot weekend update with the joke swap that everyone could not stop talking about at the holidays, could they follow this up? And I thought they had some good banter here, some fun jokes. I thought that the Che Clinton joke here was so good tonight. I love that one. from him. So there were some really good moments. I felt like the guys were on their game. They were excited to be there. And then we got 2 features on Update tonight. The first was Michael Longfellow, who is pleading to not ban TikTok. So the first stand-up we get from Michael Longfellow really since April of last year. So it's been a long time. This is one of those things that he was known for when he came on the show, that we'd expect to see a lot of stand-up from him. And we haven't gotten it, Bill, but we do get it halfway through the season here. So what did you think of Michael Longfellow on TikTok?
Probably the best correspondent piece of season 50. I think Longfellow was amazing here. He brought his A game. So many good jokes. Obviously, the topicality of it. It's got to be in part of a set. I know Sammy just went to see him, so I'd be curious to know if he's already been kind of working this out in the clubs. It was so good, and every line was better than the last. Oh no, China knows I like thick Latinas. Like that's one of my favorite lines of the season. Like that was so great. First political opinion he's ever had. So this was so good, and we see why Longfellow. This is the place for Longfellow to shine. He needs to do this more often.
Yeah, I like the part where he's just like using his finger to swipe in person because he can't stop swiping. To me was so good. Law, how do you feel about Longfellow on Update tonight?
Man, I just missed him in general, man. Like it's such a large cast, and he gets squeezed, and I know it's got to be tough for him, but this was a great new energy show. Him and Devin Walker. Consistency is key. So of course next week we're not going to see either one of those dudes, but it was great to see Michael get his spot in his element. I thought it was great. I thought that line too about it's my first political opinion. It felt like I was like, oh yeah, he's in the zone here. So I thought it was great. I want to see more of him. Don't know when the hell that's going to happen. So at least they brought him out to start. He was the first correspondent of 2025, so that was cool.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this was exciting for me. I was worried that they had given up on him for stand-up, and the fact that they went back to him gives me confidence that they'll continue to use him moving forward. But I really missed seeing him on the show. I think he's brilliant. So for me, this was awesome. So between this feature and the next one, we get a little mini segment here called "Hear Me Out" from Colin Jost, and of course, it's season 50, so we have to go back to
Hear us out.
Yeah, so let's talk about "Hear Me Out" with where he's gonna say, I'll see if I can get this out, but Jost is gonna talk and defend AI generated child porn because he believes that it's the best solution for pedophiles. And then as he's saying "Hear me out," he realizes what he's saying and he backtracks quickly. Bill, this could be a new good bit for Colin Jost.
It definitely could. And my mind for that millisecond when he said, I have a new piece, I thought we were going to get a really with Seth and Amy. I really did. I thought this was going to be our cameo. We haven't had an episode without an SNL alum this season. I thought all of a sudden they were going to roll the chairs out and Seth and Amy were going to be there. But this worked just as good. This was a great piece. It was very quick. And as he's working his way through it and then said, now I hear it. That was a perfect button on that joke. I love this.
Yeah, I was rewatching some of their earlier updates as I'm getting myself ready for SNL 50 in a few weeks. And in one of their first year of doing updates, at one point, before even Joke Swap existed, Colin asks to borrow a joke from Che. And then as he's reading one of his jokes, it's about a ruler and 3.6 versus 36 inches. And it's a great blooper. And in the early years of Jost and Che, and as he realizes what he's saying, he's like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. And I do love that persona from Colin Jost. So Law, love to get your thoughts on that, and then let's turn over to Sarah Sherman here as well, who comes in talking about dressed as in full makeup as Nosferatu, the biggest film of the holidays, and it's just basically this is what you get to see, but behind all of the makeup, all of the prosthetics is a classic Sarah Sherman ripping on Colin Jost feature. So how did you enjoy that and what we saw from Colin tonight?
I'm going to keep the thoughts on Hear Me Out short. At this, we're going to see it again. Like Michael Che even made his little joke, you know, hear me out after one of his jokes. We're going to see it again. So we'll look out for that. The Nosferatu thing is really, I'm surprised that that's like a movie that's took off or whatever. So of course it's perfect that Sarah does it. I remember, I don't know if y'all saw Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like the first season when they had the Nosferatu in it. Like, John, that's your country, by the way. Shout out to Quebec. But
Yes.
So like, nah, Sarah doing that. It's like, of course, that's her thing. I didn't really remember a whole lot of the substance of it, so I'm just gonna lay that out. Keep this short, but again, fun to see her. Fun to see her do that bit. So yeah, that's all I got to say about that one.
Yeah, I know this, Bill. Some people get tired of the whole Sarah roasting on Jost thing. To me, it's kind of fun. You know, it's not so different than, you know, Leslie Jones would constantly hit on Colin Jost. Like you know, Colin is just the perfect person to have fun with on the show. So I appreciate that Sarah isn't always going on as herself and then just doing Sarah news and roasting Jost. Like here, they're always trying to find a new creative angle to get at this. So what do you think of what we saw tonight?
100%. I think that's such in an era where we don't really get runners of any sort. The fact that Sarah is playing so many different characters, but dunking on Colin every single time is fantastic. I love that we get to see that. It's, you know, it doesn't matter who she's playing. She's going to get the Jost jokes in. And that, you know, that doesn't happen with a lot of other people. They're dynamic. You know, you mentioned Leslie, but it was always Leslie being Leslie. Like this is a whole other world where it doesn't matter who she's playing. You know, Nosferatu is a little bit of I don't even know how well it did in the theaters. And I mean, it's 100-year-old character. But the black and white cuts where, you know, she puts her hands up was really good. Having Colin end on that as well was a lot of fun. So yeah, I never get tired of Sarah dunking on Jost.
I also like the meta bit or inside bit of the idea that Colin doesn't know what's always going to be on the cue card that he's going to be forced to say as part of the feature. So the whole of like, you know, and again, I'm not a dress, so I don't know exactly if all the words are identical, but the whole like, you know, if there's blood on the field, play ball, like the fact that he has to say that to me adds to this always. So it's not just coming directly from Sarah towards Colin. It's also that we're forcing Colin to play ball. Okay, so let's talk about the first sketch after Weekend Update. So you know, very, very fascinating here. This is a good question that if we're going to work on this for our team to try and put this out on socials tomorrow. I know I saw our friend Vax in the chat as well, who does great stats as well. This may be the only time that I can remember that an SNL host has not appeared in a live segment after Weekend Update, because we didn't see him live at all. We're going to get a sketch right now that we're going to talk about in a moment that did not feature Dave Chappelle, followed by a pre-tape that did. So Dave Chappelle does not appear in a live sketch after Weekend Update. I don't remember when the last time that has ever happened for a host altogether. So, okay, so Issa Rae, as Ken says, we'll find out. We're going to get that answer because I didn't get to look it up before. But that to me was a really, really interesting part of the night. But let's talk about police report here. So we get Devin, who is coming into the sketch, again, having a really big night as Mr. Curtis, talking about to Bowen and Mikey, you're playing cops. Can you help find my girlfriend? Mikey's drawing out what the girlfriend will, Bowen's drawing out what the girlfriend will look like. Mikey's asking the questions. In walks Keenan as Dwayne, the janitor. And as Devin's answering the questions, he's looking at Keenan, who keeps telling him, don't answer the questions. It's a trap. It's a trap. And the whole thing about how Devin sort of turns and wants to say complimenting things about his girlfriend because he doesn't want to get in trouble in case he says the wrong thing about her weight and qualities and features and all of that. So, Law, what did you think about the police sketch?
See, I wonder if there was any consideration to Keenan being, or Dave playing the part that Keenan wound up having. Like this was Keenan's first appearance on the show. Obviously, we're talking about how Dave wasn't in the sketch at all. So I thought that's what was on my mind. I was like, oh, Dave's not in this. And finally Keenan gets on. So I was thinking of that. As far as the sketch though, it was very it was interesting. I almost was like expecting like the girlfriend to actually show up at some point in the sketch. Like I wasn't sure exactly what they were describing. I'm like, did I miss something? Like, so it was cool. And again, like the pacing of the show, you knew there wasn't going to be a lot after update. This was the only live sketch because Pop Balloon, we're calling that a pre-tape, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the balloon one was a pre-tape.
Yeah. So it's like, man, you get one sketch after update. It's such an unbalanced show, but I thought for the only sketch you're going to get live, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I'm threading a needle here with this statistic, but what I'm trying to say is that Dave Chappelle, except for the good night, like he's backstage like having a drink, and he's physically not in a sketch from the from the fire evacuation. So the pre-musical guest, he's in nothing physically until good nights. So like he's just chilling for like 45 minutes. And I just don't know when that has last happened, and I'd be very curious to find those statistics. So we'll look all of that up. But Bill, how did you feel about this police report sketch?
Yeah, John, you and I talked about this during our host countdown during the summer, but this was a common occurrence in the 70s, early 80s. You know, the hosts would just kind of do their thing up until update or Saturday Night News, and then they would just kind of disappear. You know, there was a Danny DeVito episode I remember I was talking about where, you know, we don't see him after a certain point in the show. That is interesting to me. Also, this is the second episode in a row where we had a sketch without the host in it. You know, we had a sketch without Martin Short in it before Christmas. That doesn't happen anymore really either. So it's very interesting. You know, these are two huge personalities. You know, Martin's approaching 80, so that was part of that. Dave is probably just like, I'm done, man. I'm going in the back, and you know, you all do your thing. And
could I just jump in on that point, Bill, before you get into the sketch, which is just, you know, to sort of fill the vision in for some of the listeners, is that when you're backstage at SNL, it's not like, you know, when you're in a play that you're like stage left or stage right and you're waiting in the wings to like go on. It is like a full, extremely long hallway with dressing rooms where a lot of people, as the show keeps going on and they're no longer in sketches, or writers are no longer having their sketches on and then needing to go under the bleachers with Lorne, end up congregating in the hallway and hanging out and having drinks and getting ready for the good nights and then to go off to the after party. So it sort of becomes a little bit of a party atmosphere in the hall, which is why somebody like Dave may subject himself to just hanging out for the last 45 minutes, talking to whichever celebrity is there back there as well. So it's very, it is a very unique thing to get to see in person. And that's why I'm not so surprised about it. Sorry, Bill, let's get your thoughts on that.
No, absolutely. I mean, and there's probably a writer in him, you know, telling Lauren, this is what I want if I'm going to come back and do this for a fourth time.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the sketch itself, there just wasn't enough setup. Like, why is Keenan so insistent on, you know, Devin not saying it? Obviously, the joke is you never talk about a woman's weight, even if she's not in the room. But the fact that he was so insistent with it, I do like Keenan's, you know, physical moments in this, and the fact that he's not really saying a lot until we get later in the sketch. But yeah, this was kind of flat for me after a night where we had a lot of impressive sketches. Not a lot, but
yeah, it took me, to be honest, a little bit to get what they were going for here. Like originally when Keenan was like, don't say anything, it's a trap, I laughed at the joke because I was trying to figure out, like, it took me, I think it took me maybe like 2 minutes into the sketch to realize that the trap was that eventually when they find the girlfriend, she's going to hear how he described her to the police. And I don't like it. I don't know if anybody else like got that right away, but once it clicked, later on, I thought it was funny when they were going back and forth, and Keenan was really pushing him on the, okay, well, like, don't say this, make sure you include a crown on top of the drawing, like all of this stuff. Like, once that finally got there, I just don't know if for anybody else, if this clicked right away, if it worked the whole thing for you. But for as somebody who just at first was like kind of confused about where they were going with it, it took me a while to completely buy in. So I feel like this was, again, a really good idea. I don't know that it fully executed on what they were going for, but I was really excited to see Devin as the, you know, star of the sketch, and the Devin Keenan dynamic that we unfortunately just haven't seen enough of. And for me, like, I thought this was fun. It just didn't click as much as the other stuff in the night. Then we get a pre-tape. So we didn't get any pre-tapes before. We were wondering if this was going to be the first episode since season 34 to not have a pre-tape in it. But we do get one at the end of the night where I believe that there was a live sketch that was cut from the Marty episode that was a Pop the Balloon sketch. And they, you know, repurposed this idea for a pre-tape here where Eggo's playing the host. We have some of the single ladies played by Sarah, Ashley, Jane, and Heidi. So the first and only appearances for Ashley and Jane, who don't appear live tonight, only in the pre-tape. And the concept of the sketch or of the game is that single guys are going to come in, and as soon as they say something that girls don't like, they're going to pop the balloon to say, we're not interested in you. So we see, you know, some escalation with Andrew and then Devin and then Keenan playing their, you know, weird guys. And then in comes a theme that we've seen in almost every time Chappelle has hosted the show, where he's going to bring back some Chappelle show characters. And this time he comes in with Silky Johnson, his character, and Donnell Rawlings playing Beautiful. And then GloRilla is going to appear as part of the girls. We also get Donnell coming in as Ashy Larry, which I don't think we've ever seen on SNL before. But it's fun, again, to get Donnell on the show with Chappelle, getting some of these characters in here. So, Bill, your thoughts on our final sketch of the night?
Yeah, I'm never going to be mad about seeing Silky Johnson, man. Bring that player hair's ball any time of the day. And Donnell is so great. We've seen him a couple of times cameo with Dave on SNL as well. So yeah, this took me back to the early 2000s and seeing this. Obviously, he was in the Walking Dead pre-tape, and he was in the House of Dragon one, I believe, too. So we have seen this before. The novelty hasn't really worn off for me. The concept of the sketch is a little strange. I do wonder, I'm sure some of the younger people will know, is this a real thing? Is this an actual dating game with the Pop the Balloon?
I believe so. Yeah, it is a real show.
Okay. So yeah, that concept is interesting. I do like the whole dismukes Heidi thing. Heidi doesn't like him because he likes to cook food and she doesn't like the smell of food. So there were some good lines in here, but yeah, overall the sketch wasn't great other than Silky.
Yeah, it's a YouTube show. So this is something that's like pretty popular on YouTube. Law, what do you think of the Pop the Balloon?
Of course, Andrew Schmeek's going to have another character where he gets disrespected by. Nah, I'm not even going to go into that. Nah, it's crazy. Like, Silky Johnson does survive Walking Dead and House of the Dragon. He's the only one. He's the only one, man. I remember Tyrone Biggums. He at least made it to House of the Dragon, but he didn't make it to this episode. So
actually, he would have, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Tyrone Biggums in a cut sketch.
See, this is why this is a Saturday Night Network. You know what I'm saying? Keep me honest. Like, yo, you should have saw me when I saw Ashy Larry. I was like, oh snap! Like, I threw all the way back. They actually brought him on, and I didn't expect that at all because he was already in the sketch. I didn't think they would double up and have him end it like that. That was perfect. I could care less about the damn balloon, man. Outside of Andrew always getting dunked on in these damn sketches. Like, he got one of these sketches. Andrew got to write himself coming out on top. He got to stand up for himself. But other than that, yeah. I'm glad they got this on. I'm glad they got and that's all I gotta say about that.
Yeah, I mean, this was like a fun bit that had nothing for me except for the characters from Chappelle Show. So like if they didn't have those in here, I just would have said like, okay, like I'm glad they repurposed repurposed an actual show and put it on SNL, great. But like, it would have done nothing for me beyond that. And the fact that they were able to get these characters in, and I know we have seen them before, as Law said, in other pre-tapes over the years, but to me, it is always really exciting and a great blast of nostalgia, because there are a lot of people who tune into this episode because they followed Dave Chappelle for over 20 years. And, you know, getting to see these characters on the show is really exciting for them. So Donnell bringing back Ashley Larry, like we said, Silky Johnson, and the idea that, you know, we're gonna turn the sketch on its head and include Chappelle Show characters in a real dating show, for me is always really fun. I think of, you know, sketches that I've loved over the years at SNL, including, you know, when they got the Wild and Crazy Guys and the Dick in a Box guys in a dating show, like that type of thing. I always think is really fun when you take other characters from other universes and put them in this type of environment. So I do, you know, if I could redo the whole thing, I would probably have them in it even more, but I know they probably felt like the surprise of bringing them in at the end was worth it. So it's just a stylistic choice, but overall, it was fine for me. Okay, so that was it for the night with all the segments that we saw in the live show here. We're going to think about how we want to rate this night out of 10. Chat, I'm going to ask you also to think about how you want to rate this and put them in the chat. I will tell you about what was cut here from the night. So starting on Weekend Update, I alluded to it before, but for the second episode in a row, Marcelo and Jane were cut as Grant and Alyssa, their couple, where one of them's, you know, they're very different opposite couple thing that we saw earlier this season that everybody loved. This was cut again from Weekend Update, talking about their holidays. It was almost identical to what was cut from the Marty Short episode, except it ramped up cocaine jokes with Marcelo. So that was cut from Weekend Update tonight. We also had 4 other sketches that were cut. One was a pre-tape called American Vigilante that featured Chappelle, Mikey, Heidi, Devin, and Emil. And it was a pre-tape parody of the Luigi Mangione case with Tyrone Biggums and Crack. So that got cut. I would not be surprised if that ended up online. So that's the type of thing that if it's not already, I think that could go up pretty soon. We had 3 other live sketches that were cut. One was a steel mill sketch where Devin visits his dad, again played by Dave, at the steel mill, as the dad pleads why he shouldn't work at the steel mill. So, you know, he talks about him dropping out of college and all that stuff. Chappelle tried to convince him not to end up like him with half a crotch or sell thongs for $5 online. So that featured Devin, Chappelle, Keenan, Mikey, and Andrew. There was a sketch called Bad Gay Marriages where Bowen, Dismukes, and Chappelle had a wedding boutique specializing in low-quality, last-minute gay weddings. It also featured Heidi, when James and Emil and Jane and Ashley were in this one as well. And yeah, so then we had a sketch called VH1 Legends of Rock and Roll, where Dave plays a character who is copying Stevie Wonder, pretending to be blind, but still has no fans. It also featured Mikey as the host, Heidi as Dave's date, Sarah as an uglier woman, and James and Marcelo. So those were the sketches that were cut. In the show, we saw a bumper tribute to David Lynch. In dress rehearsal, there was a Roy Orbison performance of In Dreams, which I believe he performed on Saturday Night Live in 1987, that David Lynch then used that song in some of his films. So I think they had the Roy Orbison performance lead into the David Lynch bumper that was not in the live show. So that's what we ended up getting here. And those are our cut sketches. Bill, very fascinating night of Saturday Night Live. How are you going to rate it?
Very fascinating night. One last thing about that, though, John. You know, they do give the bumper to David Lynch, but they don't give one to Bob Uecker. Mr. Baseball died this week. Hosted in season 10, I believe, or sometime in that Ebersol era. How they didn't put respect on his name after all these years is crazy to me. But as far as the show, 7 out of 10. I think the highs were very high. Kind of petered out towards the end there with the last couple of things that we saw. But Chappelle brought it in much more of a way, as we've said a bunch of times, than we've seen the last couple of times.
Law, how are you going to rate tonight?
Bill, I was absolutely, when it did that momentary fade from black, I thought that it was going to be for Bob Uecker. And, you know, I know David Lynch passed away as well, but I thought it was going to be for Bob. So my thoughts are shared with you. Tonight, for me, I'm going to go with a 6. I feel like it's a cop-out because I feel like I should say a 5. But I'll go 6. I thought first show in 4 weeks, I thought things were good overall. I thought the things that were an issue were absolutely predictable. You know, the pacing of the show, the unevenness of it, the just not seeing a lot of cast members overall, you know, jamming them in cold opening. But I thought what was funny was really good. I thought update was really good, and I think the show has pretty decent momentum headed into next week.
Yeah, I think I'm probably I'm a little bit on. If I had to be real, I'd probably go 6.5. I think I could bump it up to a 7 on the scale of this exceeded my expectations for Dave. I do feel like his monologue was better than I expected it to be. I'm always like, is he good? But it was good. And the Immigrant Dad talk show I thought was really solid. Fire Evacuation for me, like I said, one of the best sketches of the season. So, you know, I know that there are some people out there that maybe didn't want to watch the episode, but wanted to find out what people thought about it and if there was anything they should check out. And I absolutely recommend check out the fire evacuation sketch. It would be totally worth it. Weekend Update was pretty solid here tonight as well. So, you know, 6.5-ish I probably settle at, but it definitely exceeded my expectations for Dave Chappelle. I think this was a really good outing for him. And I think, like I said at the start of the show, a redemption story for him in terms of his SNL legacy and how the super fans really look at him as an SNL host. And Bill, it was great to talk to you about him this summer and where he was voted on the list, because he is somebody who is a large part of SNL's history now and his role in the last 10 years. And for me, I feel pretty confident that he is, you know, he belongs on that list of one of the greatest hosts in SNL history because his episodes are so unique. And so, you know, some of them are very special and some of them you could just call very different from everything else. So I'm glad that we were able to break this one down all together here tonight. Of course, we have more coverage coming up this week of this Chappelle episode. I'm really excited to watch this one a second time to see if I feel even better about it going into Monday. So we will be there on Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern to talk about the history of Dave Chappelle on Saturday Night Live and break down all of these sketches and moments even further on our roundtable. On Wednesday night, we will have our By the Numbers show where Mike Murray will be there with the stats for this episode. And I could promise you that they will be some of the most interesting stats we have ever had on By the Numbers show. So I know Mike even timed the monologue live tonight, so I'm sure he'll talk about all of that on Wednesday nights. Of course, we'll have our patron sketch breakdown. So if you are not a patron, you can join us at patreon.com/the SNL Network. We'll have the poll up. You vote for the segment you want us to break down even further. If you want it to be the monologue, you can. I could talk about another 16 minutes. But yes, we will break that down even further this week, and that'll be out on Thursday. We're also working on a new episode of Everything You Need to Know About Saturday Night Live. So season 20 will be coming out soon. Speaking of shit shows, that'll be a wild one when that one gets released. So looking forward. We're trying our best to have that one out for you this coming Thursday. So stay tuned to the socials and the channel to see when that one gets released. And of course, we will be back here in 1 week's time to talk about the Timothée Chalamet double duty episode of Saturday Night Live. That one will be unique and interesting to talk about. So I can't wait to be back here in 1 week from tonight to talk about that. And in a little over 4 weeks from tonight, the greatest night in SNL history is on the horizon as we will celebrate 50 years of the show. I'm excited to do that on the podcast and as well, you know, watch what SNL has in store for us. So we're inching a little bit closer to that. A lot of coverage on its way for SNL 50. So I'm very excited for everything we have planned here in 2025. And thank you to everybody for joining us. Bill, thanks so much for being a part of this show here tonight. First hot take show of the new year.
Yeah, we got it in, man. John, thank you for having me as always. What a time to be an SNL fan. All those docs dropped on Peacock this week too, so I've been watching those a couple of times. This was a fascinating show to talk about. Obviously, you can find me here on the Saturday Night Network, and on Monday, the very first episode of my tenure at the SNL Hall of Fame drops. So make sure you go check that out. There's a lot of good nominees coming up this year. We'll be talking this week about the roundtable as far as nominating. And so we've got the 15 that are going to be talked about over the course of season 7 on the SNL Hall of Fame. See you soon.
Can't wait to listen to that one, Bill. That'll be a lot of fun. So looking forward to that. Law, what's going on with you? Thanks so much for joining us here tonight.
Yeah. So I was supposed to be on Monday night and I got bumped up here to Saturday. And I'm so glad I did because your boys got 4 games in 5 nights coming up. The NBA doesn't even schedule 4 games in 5 nights. That's how ridiculous this is. Like, this is because of the wildfires and how they had to, you know, kind of postpone games and then reschedule games. So a little glitch in the schedule, and I'm gonna be at a NBA arena for most of the next week ahead. That being said, so glad I got to do this with you guys. So like it's awesome to talk about Saturday Night Live. A huge break for me, considering that I am in the middle of NBA trade season, and Kawhi Leonard is back again. John, you know the greatness of Kawhi Leonard. All right, so yep,
Yeah.
and so it's really busy, but I'm glad SNL is back. And Bill, I'm glad you threw out a shout out to those to the docs that dropped. I, as usual, am feeling like, man, I wish there was like 10 more of those coming out. Like I loved the content, and I loved how they did it. And so I'm excited for the music doc that's going to drop at the end of the month. And like you mentioned, John, I'm very like that 50th anniversary is going to, yeah, I don't want to hype it up too much. I want it to somehow exceed my expectations.
Yeah, I don't think you can hype it up too much. I think it's going to be great. So, if you're an SNL fan, go back, go watch some old episodes, old sketches, get yourself excited. Like now's the time to catch up on stuff and get ready for that night. And of course, like I said, we're going to have full coverage of that and everything we got here for Chappelle Week, Chalamet Week, leading up to all of this. So, if you want to follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, X, no longer TikTok at the SNL Network. You can follow us on social platforms. We're on Blue Sky. We're on Threads as well. And, wherever, whichever new platform pops up, we'll be there to post content. You can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify to never miss an episode of anything we have going on here at the SNN. I want to thank LateNighter.com for being our presenting partner for the show here tonight, and everybody in the chat for hanging out with us on this first SNL night of 2025. And thanks to Bill and Law for all their thoughts. And of course, as they did after Weekend Update tonight, they posted about the, where to donate for the wildfires and help in LA. And if you're able to do that, you absolutely should. So thinking about everybody over there on the West Coast, and hope everyone is okay. So thanks everybody for staying up late with us tonight. My name is Jon Schneider from the Saturday Night Network, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.